Okay, Sheikh, go ahead, inshallah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma lakal hamdu hamdan kathiran tayyiban mubarakan fih. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Muhammad an-Nabiyyil Amin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Brothers and sisters, it's my pleasure to welcome you to another episode in our series Illuminate Your Life, a study of 101 traditions from the Messenger of Mercy, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And today I have this beautiful hadith on Dawah and its priorities. I will read it in Arabic and translate and explain its beautiful meanings for us to practice. بعثني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إنك تأتي قوما من أهل الكتاب فادعوهم إلى شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وأني رسول الله فإنهم أطاعوا لذلك فعلمهم أن الله افترض عليهم 5 صلوات في كل يوم وليلة فإنهم أطاعوا لذلك فعلمهم أن الله افترض عليهم صدقة تؤخذ من أغنيائهم فترد في فقرائهم فإنهم أطاعوا لذلك فإياك وكرائم أموالهم واتق دعوة المظلوم فإنه ليس بينها وبين الله حجاب. الراوي معاذ بن جبل رضي الله عنه. المصدر صحيح Muslim. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent me on a mission to Yemen. Of course, Mu'adh is radiallahu anhu is reporting, and he advised me thus: "You are going to the people of the book, so call them first to testify the oneness of Allah and that I am the Messenger of Allah. If they accept that, then tell them that Allah has enjoined upon them 5 daily prayers every single day they should perform. If they accept that, then tell them that Allah has enjoined upon them compulsory alms to be levied from the rich and given to the poor among them. If they adhere to this, then do not go after their most precious possessions to levy, to take as zakah, and beware of the prayers of the oppressed, and there is no barrier between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." Narrated is Mu'adh ibn Jabal, is sourced in Sahih Muslim and other. This is a critical tradition that teaches us the method of preaching Islam or teaching Islam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent Mu'adh ibn Jabal to Yemen with a mission to teach and judge. He was accompanied by another prominent companion, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, and the Prophet instructed them while commissioning them to this mission. He instructed them saying, "Beautiful, yassira wa la tu'assira, wa bashira wa la tunaffira, wa tatawa wa la takhtalifa." Make it easy for the people. When you present your message, present Islam as an easy, practical, and simple religion to practice, and do not make it hard on them. Give them glad tidings. Don't terrorize them, and do not turn them away from Islam. And listen to one another, and do not dispute. Both traditions mentioned above show the critical role of a sound method in preaching and teaching Islam. They explain the Quranic verse. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we explained earlier, the mufassir of the Quran. He is the inspired interpreter of the Quran. So Allah talks about dawah in this surah An-Nahl. "Udu ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal mawidati al hasana wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan inna rabbaka huwa a'lamu biman dhalla an sabilihi wa huwa a'lamu bil muhtadin." Call unto the way of thy Lord with wisdom and goodly advice and exhortation, and argue with them, dialogue with them in the most virtuous manner, excellent manner. Surely thy Lord is he who knows the best those who stray from his way, and he knows best the rightly guided. A close study of these traditions reveal important rules that a da'iyah or a preacher or a teacher must observe. The Prophet first points out the importance of knowing the people one is addressing. So, if you are preaching, you should know to whom, what is the background, What is the language you can communicate? What is the level of discourse? So he tells Mu'adh that he should know that he is going to the people of the book. That's the audience. So keep that in mind. This is upon all teachers and preachers ought to observe. Ali, the fourth caliph of the pious caliph, said, خاطب الناس على قدر عقولهم هل تريدون أن يكذب الله ورسوله. Speak to people according to the level of understanding. Would you like them to falsify Allah and His Messenger? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was known as the best teacher because he was always careful to relate his message to the audience or the person he was speaking to. It is said of him, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا تكلم مع الصبي ظن الصبي أنه صبي مثله وإذا تكلم مع العجوز ظن العجوز أنه عجوز مثله. If the Prophet were to speak to a child, the child would think he is a child like him. And if he were to speak to an old man, the man would think that he is an old man like him. We have examples of Rasulullah speaking to nomads. The uncut nomads from the outskirts of Arabia, from the outskirts of Medina and elsewhere, nomads, he will speak them using their style of conversation and their dialect and the same tone they use. We also know that he commissioned Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu, an important companion from Ansar, to learn Hebrew and Syriac language to communicate with those who speak those languages. So after rushing the crucial role of the audience, the Prophet instructs Mu'adh to observe priorities. Begin with the first things first. Very, very important. I still remember a student who joined McGill University when I was a student there. He had converted recently to Islam, and then he calls me in the midnight because he happened to be in a mosque, and there was this group of Dawah, Tabligh mission, and he had a ponytail, and they told him he must cut it, otherwise he will go to hell. So the man called me, if this is the Islam, if it is it, I don't want it. And of course, I took time to explain to him this is not the method Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used. So first things first. Although Islam is a complete way of life, one should start out with the fundamentals before the details. So he only mentions the basic tenets in this. Only 2-3 things. So he is to call them to accept the testimony of oneness of Allah and the messengership of Prophet. Even though the people of the book adhere to monotheism, they have compromises. That's why one must trust that oneness. Because of their dogma of Trinity or triune God, they compromise this oneness. But anyway, Tawheed is the most important principle to begin when we teach Islam. The Prophet adds, if they accept this, then tell them of 5 daily prayers. If they accept that, then tell them of zakah to be levied. Of course, he doesn't mention hijab and all those other detailed rules. It will come as they practice this, they internalize this, they will be motivated to go for more and more. We can see the Prophet using the same method of mentioning only the fundamental duties while teaching Islam. People would come to him and sit some time for days and he will only teach the faraid, first things. The reason for this is that he did not want to burden people. He wanted to take them slowly and surely through a gradual method. Gradual method is observed in the revelation of the Quran as well as in the institution of Sharia laws. Aisha, one of the greatest scholars in Islam, the beloved wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, says the Quranic revelation started stressing first the resurrection and heaven and hell. The matter is essential belief actually. The rules of halal and haram came only much later when the people flocked to Islam and internalized those lessons. resurrection and standing for judgment before Allah and heaven and hell. Then they were told, but if they were on the contrary, they were told not to drink, not to fornicate, they will say, they would have said, we can never give up drinking, we cannot stop fornication. The Prophet ﷺ consistently used the above method in teaching and preaching. So he would only mention the fundamentals to the newcomers to Islam. Here is one beautiful example. A man from Najd with disheveled hair, as the reporter says, approached Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Of course, he is murmuring, and people cannot make out what he's saying, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam knows his language, asking him about Islam. The Prophet told him it is to pray 5 times a day. The man asked, do I have to pray more? He said, no, unless you wish to volunteer. It's not obligatory, but 5 daily prayers you must observe. Then he mentioned the fasting of Ramadan, and the man asked, do I have to observe any other fast? The Prophet replied, no, unless you wish to volunteer. Then the Prophet mentioned zakah, and the man asked again, do I owe any other charity? He replied, not unless you wish to volunteer. The man went away saying he never mentioned Hajj for him. Maybe at that time Hajj was not obligatory, or he thought he should stop there. The man went away saying, I will never add or diminish anything from what is told. The Prophet turned to his companion and said, the man shall succeed if he is true to his word. Lessons. It is important to use the proper method in preaching and teaching Islam. We ought to consider the audience and relate the message to their level of understanding, and also use proper language in communication. We should start with the first thing first and deal with fundamentals only so as not to confuse people. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.